Well, welcome everyone to Deck Tech here on Fab Maniac, and we are looking at a bit of a interesting list here. We're here to talk about this specific spice right here, which is Iris of Reality Prism.
Yeah.
And it's something that's been on your back burner for a very long time, has it?
Yeah. It's finally becoming a reality by the seams of things. But yeah, I was just trying to remember then. Um, I'm fairly sure I at least built up a pile of, 80 cards over 6 months ago, like before Everfest came out. Um, I just I don't know, like when Iris was spoiled by Card Merchant back in Monarch, I was like, man, that's a cool looking weapon, like pitch a blue, swing for four, kind of had that Guardian-esque feel, Bravo feel with Anathos from Wraith. Obviously, can't get it up to six unless, well, we'll talk about that later, but yeah, same kind of thing, but it had go again, and yeah, love the weapon. So build up a list, obviously more blue and red. Trying to make some shields, have more blues to pitch to Iris, and then just having like bigger red attacks to try and do the rest of the damage. But it was pretty difficult, to be honest, like just relying on like prismatic shield and then having to cast like the big auras or whatever. And just didn't really quite work because you can't get soul as much, or at all really with heralds without Luminaris and blah blah blah. So tried it a few times, left it there, always had it in my mind. And then when Everfest came out, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm pretty sure these blue auras are like really good for Iris, like Iris Prism. Apart from haze bending, they seem to be less respected than the yellow auras, like when you stick them to the board. And if you don't have them out, they pitch to swing another aura for four. So that was cool. So I rebuilt the deck a bit there. Had a couple games, trying cards like Mage Master just for the extra greed of, trying to get two blue auras out in a turn. But yeah, something, I don't know, still missing. And obviously Starvo, just became an absolute menace. And in a way, I think this deck is a bit slower. Luminaris kind of allows you to set up gradually and like build more and more, turn by turn. And you're kind of chipping away at them each time, and maybe a Herald in there as well. Whereas this deck seems to be a lot more defensive and just kind of maybe getting a card into soul, like literally one, or maybe finding like your first haze bending, or getting a prismatic shield out when you haven't had to block out or whatever, if you've got like three blues in hand, before it really starts doing anything. So yeah, quite different. So against Starvo, that wasn't a good tactic at all, because you'd just die before anything really happened. But yeah, then I don't know, I played you, didn't I, like the other week online for fun. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I've got some spice for you. Like, if you don't mind, I'll play it into Oldham, because generally Guardian's a bit of an easier matchup. Just to test her out. But that was pretty interesting. I think, I don't know if you remember it the same, but it felt almost like the Iris Prism fatigued Oldham, essentially.
Yeah, almost felt. I think I basically ran out of cards at one point, I think.
Yeah, you probably had like a hand or so left in deck, and it was just like two or three, maybe even four on the last swing. Four attacks coming at you. So that was fun. And then I played another one of our local buddies, Carl, into Ice Lexi the other night, and I was ahead like 20 something life to his like 7. And then I kind of, I don't know, I think an hour or two got through and I lost some shields, and then I don't know, just lost a bit of tempo, but ended up stabilizing at 1 life each, and I just blocked him out for like 2 or 3 turns, and then as soon as he was off, I just like made a shield or two or found a prismatic or whatever it was, and yeah, locked them out of the game again. Like same thing, just 4-4-4. Having multiple fours every turn is pretty good, as other decks know.
Yeah.
So,
when you're at 1, 4 is a very bad number to try and block.
Yeah, and you're just not using cards to do it, like really, or not in the same way. It's much different than playing like Rabble, Scar, Snatch. You've used 3 cards, whereas this deck you've used maybe a card and a half to make 3 shields, and then yeah, you're just pitching 3 cards, so it's good value in that sense.
All right.
And yeah.
All right.
So
well,
then I put it in paper. I put it in paper last week, so yeah.
Yep, and it didn't do too badly.
Yeah. So it also with Armory, I thought we'd take her for a test run. But yeah, it was 3 wins and a draw. I mean, went to time with Dromai. I was going to lose that game. Obviously, Iris into, 1 Ether Wing, 1 attack Ether Wings, and just like bigger dragons was pretty bad. So I think, yeah, if we'd had a couple more turns, I would have died to like 2 Uvias on board with like 4 or 5 Ether Wings or something. It was pretty rough. Yeah. And then you helped me out on Friday night.
We had a bit of a brewing session, or at least a theory craft session. The night before Rotonets.
Yeah. Took the deck like, okay, well, it went 3-1 essentially. It's got legs. How do I beat Dromai? And for that matter, I thought too it's going to be the same problem with Luminaris Prism, like in the mirror. So at that point, I think Friday I played like 15 or maybe even just 12 yellows. And we decided, didn't we, to just bulk up the yellows a bit more. So there was like kind of just over 1 per hand ratio in the deck, at least, for sideboarding. And then just put a Luminaris in my weapons. Arsenal.
It's a bit of a concession to the power of Luminaris, or at least into certain matchups it becomes a lot more tantalizing.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely needed. Like, that this is the thing. I think no one, like, we haven't had time to see it in full action, or probably what it will become once the deck's fine-tuned, but Dromai with Ether Wings is the same thing as when Prism gets like a critical mass of spectral shields. Like, you're just wrecked, unless you can be way ahead on life and do some massive like go again pummel turn into like killer an aura or whatever. Like, it's pretty rough. So with Iris, attacking maybe 2 times at best for 4, it just doesn't do the job at all. So yeah, you have to be a bit more, get your pingers out again, and just like, I think my guess is play a bit more reactively to, or at least wait, like whether they play a red rake or if they play a prismatic shield in the mirror or whatever it is, and then you kind of, oh, here's my prismatic shield, and get that Luminaris online, get some control going on.
So shall we just go through the list a little bit and talk about specific cards, since we're going on about specific equipment now and different matchups you'd play them in? So we have obviously the basic weapon being Iris of Reality, the default. You have a bunch of armor pieces here. You've got a skull cap, a crown of reflection, tunic, an ironhide gauntlet, Nulring gloves, footsteps, and a stiletto. So what out of those would be your basic armor?
Well, interestingly, and genuinely, there's kind of not a basic armor. But in saying that, on Saturday, I learned that skullcap is just awful, like comparative to crown. Like I should. So the one piece you will always play is crown of reflection. like I said earlier, this deck is a lot more kind of block out and just kind of wait for a good off, like a kind of more off turn from your opponent, or like swing with a CNC, they block 2 cards, and then then you maybe, if you've got the hand from that, after that you turn a corner, and then you generally close the game from there, to be honest. But having Crown is just insane. Like, this deck's so much more than Prism. Crowning 2 blue auras in Prism, Luminaris was a bit more, you know, cheeky value, or like, oh, I'm ahead, or I'm nearly ahead. If I do this, I'll definitely be ahead. Whereas in Iris, it's more like, all right, I'm in first gear, I'm blocking out most of the things, reserving life total, and now I'm going to crown and switch into overdrive and win the game. So that's definitely Crown of Reflection. Probably just going to cut Arcanite Skullcap, to be honest, completely. And then obviously Tunic as well is the only chest there, I think. So that, Tunic and Crown are full time. And then I guess like Nulrune gloves, switches, between like wizards and for rune blades and that kind of stuff, or for Briar at least. And yeah, I mean, even into like probably this and Briar, you probably potentially keep your Nulrune gloves regardless, because Crown, if you decide you want to use it turn 3, you prefer to still have a Nulrune there. And then Footsteps, I mean, Stilettos is pretty much just for wizards, to be fair. Footsteps is just so good. Like, Footsteps, it's funny, like saying before, Iris feeling a bit like a go again, small Anathos or whatever, in a control-y kind of style deck. Footsteps is just your shield, right? Like, people have said that as well. But it's very much the same functionality as having Rampart. So yeah, but in this, in Prism, when you've still got some yellow auras, it's like almost better. Well, and you've got Brother in Arms there, and you've got Oasis. So yeah, Footsteps is like really good. To be honest, on the game back and action point, it's kind of useless in this deck, like how the deck generally plays out. But it can be, I guess, useful just as a backup. So yeah, it feels a bit different in this build, but it's very, very good on the defensive side, more so than the make an action point and swing another Herald.
Yeah, talking about this deck being defensive, you're actually playing a lot more reds than a normal Prism would be playing.
Yeah. So one thing we were never going to be able to ignore. Oasis Respite is such a ridiculous card, right? Like, I almost just think it's the best common in the game that's been ever printed. And it's better, everyone's like, Oasis Respite and Oldhim is insane, but what we're just talking about with Phantasmal Footsteps, it's kind of the same function in this deck. You just like pitch a blue to Footsteps, and then if you need to, you play an Oasis and block a Snatch, or some on hit thing, or if not, then you just make a shield at end of turn and then bash them for 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, Oasis is amazing. You can kind of parry with life totals. I almost look at the gain of life similar to how you would used to play Skullcat, with that kind of life management versus your opponent. So it's quite nice just gaining back the life, like when you leak a point, block a 3 on a 4, you leak a point, and then you set up your next turn, and then you go 1 or 2 behind, and then you Oasis, and you're just like, well, that that was just free and just blanked your attack. So that card's nuts. And then 6 more of the cards, obviously 0 cost defense reacts. So yeah, there's so much about this deck. Like, I played it for fun. I won a few games, and then it's kind of like why we love Fab. Like, the deeper I went, the more I played, the more I thought about it. I was like, I just think it's a really good time for this kind of build and idea, because with Stavo going out as well, I think the main kind of idea or thing that happened, right, is that aggro decks have just become a lot more prolific again, or at least people feel like they can play them, even with Oldham around. Like we saw, Fire now everywhere this weekend, and Briar's still there, and to be honest, a big problem. But yeah, Ice Lexi, like whatever, like there's heaps of decks that are just like attack, attack, attack. So defense reactions are good again, because they almost weren't that good. Like I don't think with Stavo, like you play 1 or 2 3 red unmovable and hope to block the biggest things, but like the Oakenolds. But yeah, defense reacts seem to go away, I think, for a lot of, compared to what they were, like, so they're back 0 for 4, great rate. And the Arsenal in this deck is not as like, there's not as much pressure on your Arsenal, or like need for your Arsenal, compared to other decks I've played. So it's super sweet to just chuck a Sync or a Fate in there like the good old days, and then just block stuff. Yeah, so 9 of the reds are defensive in a way, but yeah, the rest, Command and Conquer, obviously good. And again, in this deck, that was more, I mean, it's a popper, but I think more so than OG, like Luminaris Prism. I think the CNC in this deck is a lot more important, proactively or aggressively. Even if it just takes 2 cards from your opponent, that it's done its job. Like that's kind of what you want it to do, because it helps you to establish another shield, or get an aura or whatever, and then just start swinging with it again, like from that turn even, or the next turn. So CNC is like quite good as an attack in this deck. And then Phantasmaclasm, holy crap! Like,
yep.
Again, I've tried to play that card in Luminaris. I've been on Prism for like since Monarch came out, to be honest. Like I've played other decks. I actually played Ultimate Nationals, but I wished I'd played Prism after Tidu shone the light on everything. But yeah, played a lot of Prism, and I've like tried to put Phantasmaclasm in, and I have, and like it's okay here and there, but it just doesn't feel like it fits. Like you pitch 2 yellows to give it go again, and
then you don't have a hand anymore.
Yeah, and it's just sort of like, yeah. But on this deck, it's like pitching 1 card reliably to do that, and you're not caring about the yellow thing. It's pretty good, and especially after 2 Iris swings for 8, and they might have like 2 cards left, depending where they're at in the game, how much life they've got, and then you just Phantasmaclasm them for 9 off your last 2 cards, or even 11 when you've got Pierce Reality out. That was definitely a sneaky fun play of some of the games. Just like, swing at you with this Pierce Reality with my Iris of Reality for 4, and then swing with this other thing for 4, and then Phantasmaclasm you for 11.
Yep.
Yeah, does big work. Phantasmal Haze, talk about that in a second. Illuminate was really good, so I figured with pitching blues and attacking with Go Again, you might often want at least 1 or 2 cards that are going to be a 0/4 attack that have an on hit, and of course Feeding Your Soul is like pretty useful in this deck, for late game when you need a shield to swing with, and it blocks 3 as well, which is insanely helpful, and better than another card like Snatch or whatever, defensively. So yeah, and a lot of people, because I think it hasn't been played again, like loads of people just like let it hit, and I'm like, okay, cool, that's 4 damage and a shield for later, which I'll hit you for 4 with, so that was good value. Prismatic Shield red, obviously, again, probably more important in this deck than what you would think, like with Luminaris. It's effectively, played at the right time or with the right hand, it gives you like 4/4/4, like 12 damage going in. So it's hype. And then Phantasmal Haze. So this was as soon as Everfest came out, and I was like high on the blue auras. I also thought, well, the deck's not going to have Go Again in the attacks because of no Luminaris. So, I want poppers and stuff. They don't have to go to Soul either, right? That much. So I want poppers that Everfest kind of showed us, I think, the first sort of host or different options of attacks that disincentivized your opponent to block or pop them, sorry, with a 6 power. And I was like, Phantasmal Haze is perfect because it just leaves behind a shield that then next turn, or even if on that turn, I don't know, like you don't generally play at start of turn, but you could footsteps, and then if you had a blue, even swing in with the shield itself. But regardless, like playing it at the end of a chain, and if they decide to pop it because 8's too much damage, which it is, it's a lot of damage, and then you get a shield, and then you're just like, cool, Arsenal, the sink below, and then they attack you with a 2-3 card hand, and like you sink below and you Oasis, and you've got like maybe Oasis off Tunic, and you've got 3 cards left, and then you're just like duff, duff, duff again.
Yeah.
So that idea of leaving something behind from a massive attack was like really good. I'm not sure. Like I was so excited about the card, I wanted to play 9, and they block 3 and all that, but I'm not 100% sure again if I need the reds, to be honest, or just like if there's better spots, like better cards, sorry, to put in that spot, and just in red, because we got them in yellow and blue, which is like pretty good as well.
Yeah, I can see you've just got 7 total here between all the colours.
Yeah.
In terms of saying you've got those cards that your opponents don't want to pop, the big one is obviously Miraging Metamorph, which I don't see here.
Yeah, so
it seems like it would be quite solid in this list for sure.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up, and I had that thought today, because again, something I didn't mention maybe in the equipment chat is that there's a lot less pressure on Fendel Spring Tunic in this deck than in your average Prism. You're not playing Ode or Genesis, so you don't need that Tunic in the blue as often. And so it works really well with Oasis on a turn where you want your whole hand. But also, I thought about a card like Passing Mirage. What is it? Sorry, Miraging
Metamorph.
Yeah, and I thought it kind of, with a Tunic counter, it kind of acts the same as like an Illuminate, how I was speaking about that. So, you have 3 blues, a couple auras, or spectrals, and a Tunic counter and a Miraging, and then you do the same thing. You just go Iris, remove Tunic, smash you for 7. So, yeah, I think you're totally right. Good pickup, and I will be trying that out, to be honest, in some capacity, I think.
Yeah, despite you thinking about this deck for a long time, it's very much a work in progress.
Yeah, which, I wanted to put out there and say, in this video, it's very new to me still in this form, and in a way that's actually won games, played it with different sets out and different lists, and it lost a lot. But now it feels like it's in a good spot, so it's pretty new to me as well. Like, this is pretty much one night of jamming in Luminaris, so I don't just auto lose to Illusionist mirrors, and then doing all right enough to top 4 Road to Nationals. But for anyone who likes Prism and has liked the idea of Iris, or wanting to know how to play Iris, or having some hope to play Iris, definitely take this and change it how you want. It's not fully solved yet, but it should be exciting.
Already we're thinking about different things to put in, like the aura package is definitely not set in stone. I want to run through what auras you've got currently. You really like Arclight Sentinel. Yeah,
so a funny thing on I guess theme and sort of just names of cards and how, more like storyline, but it's like Arclight often sort of seems to be played as just like this thing that stops your opponent's turn, and into Channel Mount Heroic, of course, it's pretty good on the second turn, they have that and stuff like that. But in this deck, it literally is the Arclight Sentinel in terms of like protecting. I think first and foremost, where you can, you want it to protect shimmers, because if you can get even an extra counter or two on a weapon, it's like suddenly swinging for 6. And yeah, so Arclight is more so, I think, again, than probably in the Luminaris. It's like feels more important to use as like a protector for the shimmers, or some of the other auras, or even just like when you've made 2 or 3 shields and you want to hang on to them so you can keep swinging if they're going to have like a big turn. So yeah, and off 30 plus blues,
it's pretty easy to play.
Yeah, like it legit becomes a better card. Like you don't have to like use a tunic activation for it like ever. And I think I cast it off not 2 blues once in 2 events. So yeah, that's pretty good one.
Yeah, so we're playing a lot less of the yellow auras. We're mostly focusing on the blue non-instant ones. And of those, of course, you seem to like. Which one do you like more, Shimmers of Silver or Haze Bending in this deck? They both seem insane, and they're already really good, but they seem on another level in this deck.
They are on another level on this deck. And again, like talking of like, guessing what happens in discussions behind closed doors at LSS, like I feel like maybe these cards are more tuned even towards Iris, like as a build or a deck. And also, Iris is a generic illusionist weapon, and they're generic illusionist auras, so yeah, perhaps it's a thing. But yeah, they kind of act as the offensive and the defensive ones, I guess. So Haze Bending's just like insane for the fact that it is a 4 attack go again until they kill it, and then when they kill it, it leaves behind a spectral shield, kind of like with the same idea as the phantasmal haze. No, they both got haze in the name, so yeah. Leaving behind that shield's really, really good. You can just stick it, and it's kind of, in this deck, right, it's effectively like 2 blue auras in a way in a turn, because yeah, Pierce Reality like maybe gave a buff to like 1 or 2 attacks, a couple of Phantasmaclasms over a couple of events, but you'd almost just play a blue aura that did nothing, depending. Yeah, I don't know. It's very good. Haze Bending's more defensive though, and then Shimmers is obviously like your aggressive card. That's just nuts. Like I had a 5 and a 6 out against someone, and then in another game I got it, I think against Briar. In that last game I died anyway, but it was up to 3 counters, so it's pitch a blue, swing for 7, go again. It's like pretty nice. Yeah, so both those cards are really good. And I guess Arclight into a Haze Bending, I was talking about protecting shimmers, but Arclighting into a Haze Bending, again, is like really, really good. Like with Luminaris, it's like, okay, cool. Like I've still got that aura and I've got a shield to swing for 1, but in this deck it's like, now I've got 2 4 attacks.
Yeah, you did that against me, and it was pretty rough. As a Guardian player, to get rid of 4 shields at one.
Yeah.
It's bad. Bad news.
Yeah. Parable's in there because it's defensive and it can stop poppers here and there. So I've opted to play that, but I think Ode to Wraith is kind of like the aggressive card. So kind of like I spoke about Shimmers and Haze Bending, I kind of think Parable and Ode are the same kind of contrast or comparison. I do think I might try out some Ode to Wraith, to be fair. And the other big thing with them, the break point of 4 on Iris might just do way more damage, with the life loss as well over a few attacks. But the other thing is it gives your Illusionist attacks go again, so it's like it's a pseudo Luminaris anyway. So that might be really good, but I don't know that I want to play more than sort of 9 or 10 yellow auras in total. So I'll have to see how good it is.
It does depend,
and
I
then,
guess,
of
what
course-
you're facing.
Yeah, that's true.
This Parable
But-
seems really good against all the ninjas and rune blades and such.
Yeah, it is. It is very good. I don't think I'd cut Parable, but yeah, just a matter of trying it out, seeing what's more effective, I guess. And Merciful, I don't know. I just felt like I want a bit of soul, like, oh, it's just extra, guaranteed ways of getting soul. I think there was like 2 games where I didn't have a soul or a shield for like 7 or 8 turns. And it just felt a bit like, oh man, I got to just block out again. And I think from memory, I won those games anyway, which was pretty lucky and shows the defensive power of the deck, but it was boring,
Yeah.
You've got another way. If you turn, a good thing too is like you can literally turn one, when your opponent wins the dice roll and they're like, I'll go first, and you're like, okay, and they like set up a rune chant or they play something out, Guardian plays a blessing out or whatever's going on, and then they're like, I'm going to move to Arsenal with an action point. You're like, oh damn, okay, yeah, and then like whatever. In this deck, you're just totally fine to just throw out the Merciful, and then they attack it, and occasionally they just don't have an arsenal left, depending on what they've done. And then you're like, cool, 1 arcane you, and I get a soul, and then I draw, and then I make a shield, and I beat you for 4, and I do something else like straight away. It's just like so nuts. And if they leave it, then they have a 4 anyway coming at them. So it's a good time. And I'm just playing 3 red prismatic shield and stuff. I think it's like, yeah, it's pretty nice. Merciful is very good. Soul Shield, obviously, normal card. Have to play it. Gives you soul. And Fendel Fighting Spirit. That card's really good, eh? Especially like blocking 6, there are quite a few 6s out there, and blocking with that and a fence reaction, or even like Oasis, and you gain a life. It's just like between that and Oasis, you got 6 potential incremental life gain. It's like surprisingly helpful. If people play Heart every now and then, or rarely, but argue that the value of it is good if you're going through your deck 3 times, then playing six things that do that is also very good.
Yep, having 46 life total during the whole game is great. And of course you're making spectral shields, which will save you a lot of life too. So Prism, the tankiest deck in the format, apart from Oldham, I guess.
Phantasmal Haze is 7 at yellow, so that's pretty hype. But I think that was just also the card I put in to have more yellow for Luminaris, but it's a pretty good beater, so that's why that made that in. So where are we at with blues? I guess we know about the auras.
Yeah, you got a bunch of auras. You got a couple of blue heralds. You've chosen Rebirth, Protection, and Ravages.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind Ravages and Rebirth? Because Protection's pretty standard.
So Rebirth can rebuy a Protection or a Phantasmaclasm. Phantasmaclasm, as I said earlier, feels pretty good. Even I guess when I had it, but still yellow Phantasmal Haze might even be okay. It just gets back a bigger attack than itself if it hits, generally, which is nice. And I guess it could be, it's probably better or more relevant in this deck because, again, depending on Illuminaris builds, but, before Miraging Metamorph, there wasn't really many or any heralds that you could guarantee would be in your graveyard because they go to soul. So now that this deck's got 10, I don't know, a load of non-soul phantasm attacks, it's could be better. It kind of toolboxes your graveyard in a sense. I don't know, that's why I think. And then Ravages, there are at the end of a game, these blue heralds, they just help you close out the game, right? So blue Ravagers is just another damage, which is all right. But to be fair, the one other card I was thinking about was Herald of Triumph, because earlier in the game, like if I really want a soul, or like I said, like the CNC is good just for clearing 2 cards, then I think like Herald of Triumph is like could be good for that.
Fits that role.
Earlier game. Yeah, most decks just playing some 6s, right? And then you just swing with this thing that makes it 5, and if they let it hit, you get a soul, and if they don't, you've taken 2 cards. So yeah, that might be really good as well. Have to see. Enigma Chimera, we put that in over Coalescence Mirage, the one that you always pray will get popped and you have an extra blue aura in your hand.
Yeah.
Which I also realized if they just pop it, you can activate Footsteps and play a blue aura. So it's kind of like you're literally hoping you draw this. Yeah, you draw this card with 2 blue auras in hand and hope that they have a popper. Like that's literally what you're hoping for. So, and the blue attack for 5. So I was just like, it was when I lost that game to Dromai, and I was like, man, if they play a 6-power dragon, which there's like what 2 or 3 at least, I think, something like that. But there's a few bigger ones. I was like, I'd like to just kill it with 1 attack back. So I'm going to put in blue Enigma Chimera. But yeah, I think, I don't know, like it's just another point up in damage, like that and Phantasmal Haze both hit for 6 in blue. That's pretty sweet, I think. So yeah, quite like that.
And you've got a 1-off Brothers in Arms, a 1-off Unmovable. Are these kind of just hedge picks?
They were just hedges. Like one thing I felt about this deck after playing a few games and like winning a few, whatever it was, instantly it felt a little bit like, apart from your blue auras, and as long as you have like some impactful blue attacks, there's at least sort of 5 or 6 blue cards that it doesn't really matter what they are, right? Because you're going to just pitch an inevitable amount of blues in every game. And so if they can be like utility, it kind of gives you free slots like for deck building. So yeah, I just thought 1 unmovable, and it actually came up a few times, like against Kale in the quarterfinal. I think he did a big attack, and I like blue unmovable from hand plus like a small defense react from Arsenal or something, and like managed to not get wrecked. So it was all right, but at the same time, I don't think like the rest of the blocking is so efficient, like the 3 red cards and then Soul Shield. It's probably just not necessary, and it doesn't help into like aggro, I guess, if you're trying to race or at least keep pressure on, and then you draw 2 blue auras and an unmovable, and you're like, damn. If that was just a 5 or 6 power attack, that'd be way better. I'd probably make it Brother in Arms, at worst that attacks for 4 at the end of attacking for 4 and 4 and 4, and of course it's got the sick 4 block with the whole pitch to Footsteps and do other stuff, and block with Brother in Arms as well for 4. Like it's pretty nice. I think, was there one other card? I think Illuminate in blue as well, right?
Blue Illuminate, we kind of touched on Illuminate, but the blue is actually kind of impactful because no one really wants to block 2 at the end of a chain.
Yeah. And I think the blue is specifically for, or like more so, like I'll throw it out if it's there, but like, and it's fine to do so, but I often pitch them because in late game, when you're just struggling back and forth at that like both under 10 life thing, and if you've swung with 2 4 attacks and they've leaked 2 damage, and then you just 2 them, it's like, it's devastating. So yeah, it's actually a high impact blue, even though it attacks for 2, and it, at that point in the game too, you can be out of soul, so it's like if it gives you soul, you're just like yeah. I think I'm gonna have to go in a sec.
Oh no, we should wind it up because I think we've gone over everything. So, if anyone is interested in playing this deck, quickly, what would you recommend that to them at this point? Just have fun, give it a go, and see how it runs.
I always love that question, when I watch deck tech videos. What would you suggest? Yeah, like literally, just if you're attracted to this, if you already like Prism, or you hate Luminaris because it's oppressed you or something because you play Guardian, if you're intrigued by Iris of Reality, definitely sleeve it up or something similar, and just have a go, because I guess, as we've kind of mentioned throughout, like it feels fundamentally different to playing Luminaris. Like the play patterns are way different. It's a lot more defensive, or can be, but it can also switch gears. I was saying to people over the weekend, like when I'm closing out a game, it's over in like 2 to 3 turns, which is really nice. Sometimes, I don't like being a control-ish deck and then just grinding out for like 7 or 8 or 9 more turns. This is just like 2 or 3 shields, and then Phantasmaclasm in there somewhere, and they're just over. So if you like controlling the game and then swinging for 4 with go again, it sort of gives you a bit of everything. So yeah, it's definitely really enjoyable. Yeah, and I think just try it if you want. And also, my one suggestion would be figure out how to beat Briar reliably. What's the best strategy? And then leave it in the comments so I can beat Briar too.
Yeah. Help Marnie beat Briar.
That's the one deck that's real hard for this deck. So yeah. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks for walking us through this deck for the last 40 minutes, Marnie.
Yeah, it's as you can tell, I'm passionate about it. If you talk about a deck for 40 minutes, it's it might be worth it. But also don't play it, because the more people don't play it, the better it will be for longer.
Yeah. Don't Living Legend Prism with your Iris deck.
Yeah, imagine that. That'll be the meme. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Cheers, James. And thanks to all the folk out there. Thanks for listening, and please like, subscribe, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Tell your friends.
For sure. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.